look, we have popcorn, which means today we are going to be doing a popcorn review, this time of the Joe Rogan Experience, number 2321, with Dr. Zahi Hawass on this episode of Ancient Egypt and the Bible. Okay, today we are doing a popcorn review of the Joe Rogan Experience with Dr. Zahi Hawass. Now, Joe Rogan needs no introduction. He is a former MMA mixed martial artist who has made the transition into doing these really interesting interviews. And frankly, I like Joe Rogan. I think he's a great interviewer. He asks the right questions. He asks interesting questions that probe deep into people's personalities. So I think he's a great person to do interviews. Dr. Zahi Hawass is an Egyptologist, and he has a legitimate PhD in Egyptology. He was for many, many years the director of antiquities in Cairo. Now, to explain what that is the highest position in the antiquities ministry under the minister himself. And Zahi Hawass, to the best of my knowledge, recollection, was appointed during the Hosni Mubarak period. Okay? And then after the Sisi coup, for lack of a better word, and then subsequent elections, he sort of remained this shadowy but important figure in the background. Now, one of the things about Zahi that you need to know is he pretty much controls the Giza Plateau. His sphere of influence still remains, even though he holds no official title within the Egyptian government. Okay? So he still controls the Giza Plateau. He controls who gets to dig there. He has a lot of control on who gets concessions in Egypt. He's still a very powerful man, even though he doesn't have any official title within the hierarchy of Egyptian government. Okay? So it's one of those things where once you have that sort of power in Egypt, you sort of retain it, even if you have no formal position. Now, his status and the antiquities authority over the Giza Plateau has allowed Zahi Hawass a large amount of notoriety. And for the past 20-30 years, he's more or less been the Egyptologist to celebrities. And if you ever go to one of his lectures, the first hour of his lecture is him showing you all the slides of him with celebrities. Okay? It really gets a little sickening when you, after about an hour of photograph after photograph after photograph of him standing beside Princess Diana or Barack Obama, or, you know, and that's what the first hour of his lectures is sort of this, oh, I'm important because I got to see and be with all these celebrities. Okay? So now we're going to look at the Joe Rogan Experience here and this now infamous interview, and I'm just going to add my 2 cents. We're not going to go through the whole thing because the interview is 2 hours, but we are going to hit the highlights and discuss some of the things that Zahi said. All right? So here we go with this popcorn review of the Joe Rogan Experience with Dr. Zahi Hawass.
Yeah, we're on air. Art Bill used everything to attack me. He lied to you? Yes. Oh. How the Hawass say how the Egyptian can move stones. Oh. That's not true. The Egyptians cannot do that. Ba, 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 ba. Then I was teaching at UCLA, and he called me for an interview. I said no.
Yeah. Zahi did teach at one point at UCLA. But one of the things we have to keep in mind is that was like 30 years ago. He's in his mid to late 70s now. Okay? So he was doing his teaching as a PhD student and in his early career. But he hasn't taught a class in 30 years, essentially. So, you know, just take this as sort of the proverbial grain of salt.
I'm not going to give you an interview until you come to visit me in Egypt.
Oh, this is very Zahi, by the way, where you do things on his terms. Okay? I mean, Art Bell, when Zahi was teaching at UCLA, Art Bell was a much, much bigger celebrity at that point than Zahi Hawass was. Okay? But this is how Zahi always operated, where he won't do anything for you unless you do it his way. So, very, very Zahi.
If you stood in front of the Great Pyramid and you look at it, you will never believe that this pyramid built by human being. Why? Because you don't know. And number two, if you try to do it today, you'll never be able to do it. Are you going to hire today 10,000 workmen to work for 28 years for nothing? That was the national project of the whole nation.
Okay, they didn't work for nothing. I don't know where he's getting that from. Where these pyramid builders worked for nothing for 28 years or 23 years, depending on whose date you pick here. They worked for food because Egypt was a barter economy. They didn't get paid in money. They got paid in food. And the pyramid, we now know today that the pyramid builders were paid in beef, in goats, in dried salted fish. They were paid in oil and wine and bread. So they also got medical supplies. So to say they didn't get paid for 28 years, they got the necessities of life.
I think Art Bell's real concern was how would someone possibly move those stones 4,500 years ago?
Okay.
A lot of questions, right?
Yes, but can I answer you now?
Yes, please.
Listen, two examples I will tell you. The first example happened a few years ago. I discovered a tomb in a site called Abu Sir. In the top of the tomb, there was a huge granite sarcophagus.
Okay. And this is another thing Zahi does. Is he claims the discoveries of other people. Now, he might have been there at the tomb when it was open, but he's going to claim that he's done all these discoveries himself. And I think that's sort of disingenuous because, I mean, he can't be all over Egypt all at once. Okay? His primary sphere of influence is in Giza. Abu Sir is south of Giza. It's really close to Saqqara. That's a concession owned by somebody else. So somebody else made that discovery that Zahi's now claiming that he discovered. So just keep in mind that he tells tall tales.
Now,
I promise.
I brought only 10 people because I called the Minister of Culture and I told him, we found an intact tomb. And the minister said, wait, I will bring the reporter, the press, and we'll do it live. I said, okay, but I hate to do anything live. Then I came to the site, I brought...
Yeah, this is him sort of telling you how important he is, where he tells the minister what to do. He's telling the Minister of Antiquities how this is to be done. This is sort of Zahi Hawass positioning himself as, I'm so important, I tell government officials what to do.
In a site that I'm excavating right now, we do discover 60 feet under the ground, we discover sealed sarcophagus. The lid is about 10 tons weight. 2 workmen only open the lid for me. We have a machine called the Devil.
This is just this quote, devil, by the way. It's just a pry bar, essentially. It's a lever.
I don't know why they called it the Devil.
Devil?
Devil. Why? I don't know. I asked them. They said our grandfathers called it like that. Then they brought...
This is an ancient machine?
It is an ancient machine.
Jamie could probably pull it up.
Then
It's probably online.
they put this machine under the lid, and they come doing like this, and they raise the lid a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So when the lid is raised, they put a piece of wood, another piece of wood, another,
Okay.
until there's a half a...
Yeah, this is just Archimedes' principle in action here.
feet that I can put
Right.
my face inside with the with a flashlight to see what's inside the coffer. That's what because the people today are the descendants of the ancient Egyptian.
False cause. Okay, now this is a kind of logical fallacy that they're doing Archimedes' principle here because they're Egyptians or the descendants of Egyptians. That's a false cause. They're doing it because it works. And it always has worked because, again, it's based upon a principle of physics, not because they're Egyptian people. It's even debatable if many of those people were descended from the ancient Egyptians, given that you had the Arab invasion of Egypt in 633 AD. So that changed a lot of the ethnic makeup of ancient Egypt. Really, by that point, medieval Egypt.
In Giza, we're going to tell you good news inside the Great Pyramid that we found. And also in Saqqara and Luxor. And this is why in my lecture tour now, I'm making major important announcements that we'll talk about it with you today.
Okay, what did you find?
Now, these lectures for him are a huge moneymaker. Okay. He does these tours on an annual basis. Okay. He goes across the United States. I've seen him do this across Canada. This is a huge moneymaker for him. Tickets are like $150, $200. Okay. He rakes in a lot of money on these things. But he always charges for lectures. Doesn't matter where he is. At the RC conference, I believe it was 2019, where we was at, he charged something like $50 for this non-profit academic conference to speak. So for him, he treats this like a celebrity appearance. Now, in many ways, he is a celebrity, but doesn't matter what the venue is, whether it's a non-profit academic venue in Egyptology, his own field, or if it is, say, just these speaking tours he does of America. It's always a money-making grift for him.
Some people think that I discovered evidence to prove that pyramids built by aliens or lost civilization, and I hide them. I never answer these questions. But to you, I tell you, how can I hide anything? It happened, but it's a joke. A reporter came to see me from California, to my office.
It happened, but it's a joke.
Office was located next to the Great Pyramid of Khufu.
There are no offices next to the Great Pyramid of Khufu. None. During the Nasser years, Nasser built a little palatial estate nearby the Great Pyramid, but that hasn't been occupied in decades. Okay? Once the Nasser regime was succeeded, essentially that building has been more or less abandoned. It's still there, but it's not used for office buildings. So I don't know what he's talking about here when he says that his office is beside the Great Pyramid, because there's no office beside the Great Pyramid.
And he said to me, people say at 12 noon, you leave your office and you go to the bathroom and you open a tunnel from your bathroom. So really, it's what he said. And you go from the tunnel to the Great Pyramid and you hide things and you come back. I said, okay, what do you need from me now? He said, I want to see your bathroom. This really happened. He went to my bathroom.
Did he check all the panels?
And he came back. Have you seen any tunnels in my bathroom? He said, no. I said, what are you going to do now?
Calling BS on this. There's no offices there. I don't know what he's talking about.
He said, I will publish your bathroom in the internet. And therefore, if you want to see my bathroom, write www.hawassbathroom.com.
Is that much of an issue? That people really believe it? That you had to make a website for it?
They do believe in this.
Yeah.
And some of them attack me badly.
Thousands and thousands of years ago, still to this day, puzzles people when they try to figure out how it was built.
I will tell you.
You would tell me how it was built?
Of course.
Okay.
How
do you know?
How do you know?
How do you know?
I found all the evidence of building the pyramid. We published a book 1,000 pages. This book is the Bible of the pyramids of Giza Plateau.
Okay, tell me how they did it.
Now, what we found out, the major problem that people think about pyramids, because most of the information that's written on pyramids are wrong.
Most of it?
Most of it.
In archaeology books?
In archaeology books.
Yeah, that I don't think he can back that claim.
Really?
Except me and Mark Leaner.
You guys are the only one?
Oh, him and Mark Leaner. That's the only people who know how the pyramids were built. Well, that's because if he didn't include Mark Leaner in that, he would catch holy heck for that. Because Mark Leaner is the only one between the two of them that's actively digging at Giza. You know, I don't think Zahi has turned a spade in 30 years. Okay? Leader is on the ground. He's doing active excavations there. He is the great expert on the Giza Plateau and pyramids. Zahi is sort of this celebrity parasite that sort of latches on to Leaner like a lamprey.
I excavated every bit of sand.
Okay, what do the archaeologists have wrong in these archaeologist books?
For example, number 1. They say that the workmen who built the pyramids worked only 4 months a year. When the flood covered the whole country, the king hired the workmen to work in this pyramid. This is wrong, and I'll tell you what's correct. Number 2, that the stones used in building the Great Pyramid came from Tora, and Tora is a 25 miles to the east from Giza. And number 3, that Khufu ruled for 23 years. And number 4, that the stones of the Great Pyramid are 2,300,000 blocks.
I don't think Zahi has been in a class for 30 years. And I don't know any Egyptologist that would say, first of all, that the pyramids that were seasonal employment. Okay, nobody says that anymore. I don't know what he's talking about here. As far as the stones being from Torah, some of them are. The casing stones are from Torah. The rest are local, and I don't know why he would say that Egyptologists in general would say that, and you know that they would be teaching otherwise. Okay, I mean we know where the quarry is, so I don't local on Giza, so most of the internal stones would be local to Giza, but a lot of them were shipped in by boat too, so you got to keep that in mind. His third point of Khufu reigning 23 versus 28 years. That's still debated in the field. Okay? For those who are Manetho maximalists, they will hold to that 23 years. Some will agree with Zahi here and say it was 28. 5 years difference. I don't think it really matters that much. As for the 2 million stones, that was an estimate by Edwards. And nobody cares really if that estimate is all that correct or not, because you can't go in and count the stones block by block. So the whole idea that it's 2 million stones, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't think that matters. Either way, nobody's teaching that as absolute fact. So, you know, here Zahi throws the entire field of Egyptology under the bus. Again, to basically say, everyone's wrong, I'm right. And I think that's, boy, that's poor thinking. Really, really poor thinking. You know, the whole field of Egyptology is a cumulative field. It's based upon not just the ideas of one person, and certainly not Zahi, since he's parasited off of many others, but it's the idea of many, many people whose contributions have you know, added to the field. I mean, probably the biggest discovery on pyramid construction in the last 10 years was the contribution of Roland Enmarsh, because he discovered how the Egyptians managed to move blocks up inclines using a pulley system. Okay, that wasn't a Zahi discovery. That wasn't even a Leaner discovery. That was Roland Enmarsh's discovery at Hut Noob. So again, Zahir is just throwing the entire field under the bus. He has no idea what's being taught in classrooms or in textbooks anymore because he clearly doesn't read them. So, again, I think this is a really sort of disingenuous thing that Zahi's saying here.
How many blocks are there?
Now, let us talk about number one, the workman.
The workman.
I found the tombs of the pyramid builders, only 1 mile south of the Sphinx. A major...
We also found the workers' village within the precinct of Giza as well. And that's documented by Mark Leaner, not Zahi.
Important discovery that can tell everyone. Number one, that pyramids built by Egyptians because of the names that we found inside the cemetery. And they were not slaves.
It is true that the pyramid builders who worked with stone, they were Egyptian. But they're not the only pyramids either. There were, especially when you start getting into Dynasty 5 pyramids, you have pyramids that are a mix of stone and mud brick. Those that were made of the mix of mud brick and stone probably used slaves in the making of the mud brick, because mud brick construction was a slave endeavor. It wasn't a Egyptian endeavor. Okay, so it's going to depend upon the construction of the pyramid. Now, for Giza, those 3 pyramids are made of all stone. So those would have been done by the craftsman class, not a slave class. And pretty much every Egyptologist accepts that these days.
Inside the tombs, we found the tools that the Egyptians used to cut the stones.
What tools?
Diorite and flint tools, because in the Old Kingdom, there was no iron.
Here Zahi is claiming that the pyramid builders used stone tools to build the pyramids, particularly diorite. Now, this is patently wrong, and it's been known to be wrong for years. He's right, there was no iron, but there was bronze. Arsenic bronze, to be specific. And arsenic bronze has been extant in Egypt since the early dynastic period. In fact, the big authority on this is Martin Adler of the Czech Institute of Egyptology. And he's done many, many works on Old Kingdom bronze tools. Now, one of the things that Adler has done is he's done some excavations at Abu Sir, where bronze tools, now these are Old Kingdom 5th Dynasty burials. The pyramids of Giza were built in the 4th Dynasty. So this is the next dynasty right after the Giza pyramids. Okay? And these are examples of bronze tools that were recovered, and these are 5th Dynasty tools at Abu Sir. Okay? Now, how do we know these were used with stone? Well, we have them portrayed in pictures like this one. These are a pair of sculptors who are going to be sculpting in stone. And they are using a variety of tools in bronze portrayed on this relief. We also know that at Giza Plateau itself, that bronze tools were used there, because on some of the stones we find saw marks. Now, here is an example of a stone. You can see the chisel marks at the top. Okay, so what they would do is they would put in chisels, hammer them to split the stone, but then afterwards they would go over it with a kind of saw that would flatten out the side. And it's really difficult to see here, but if you were there in person, you would see this really clearly. This is the best photograph I could take of the saw marks. Okay? But there are definitely saw marks that have been the result of bronze tools, not diorite. So, this idea that they built the pyramids of diorite, which is a very hard stone, but still, is, I think, ridiculous. I think this is ridiculous. I think this flies in the face of the evidence. It's almost like Zahi hasn't kept up with the literature.
Available online? Can we look at them?
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Are they online?
No, in my book.
Buy my book!
Flint and diorite? What is diorite?
Diorite, D-I-O-R-I-T-E. Diorite is more sharp stone than iron.
Doesn't matter if it's sharp. You don't want sharp tools for necessarily for working on stone. You actually want kind of blunt tools. What you're doing when you're splitting stone and working with stone is you want tools that can overcome the brittleness of the stone. This is why when you look at sculptors' chisels, they're not super sharp. Okay? Woodworkers' chisels are sharp because sharpness is what you do when working wood. This is why you would say use a cold chisel for stone and a sharp chisel for softer materials. Okay? When you're trying to overcome brittleness in a medium, sharp is not an advantage. So you don't want something like diorite that can hold a sharp edge. What you want is something like bronze that, okay, you can form it into a chisel. The chisel itself can take a lot of beating, but moreover, it can overcome the brittleness of the stone as you chisel it.
And it came from a quarry south of Aswan.
So you feel like they used this very hard stone to cut into
the stone. And I will come back to this cutting the stones. Okay. But let me continue about the workmen.
Okay.
We've got lots of examples of bronze stone cutting tools from the Old Kingdom. I don't know why he's doing this diorite shtick.
We found a whole city for the technicians, for the artisans. And we discovered thousands of animal bones. Because people always say that the workmen who built the pyramid, they ate only garlic and bread.
Who says this? Who says that the workers at the pyramids ate garlic and bread? You know, this would only be popular literature or dilettante archaeologists saying this. You know, we know that they ate meat. Okay, cattle. They eat beef. They ate knucklebone soup. They ate goat and fish and wine and oil. These were the premium products of Egypt. So I don't know where he's getting this, that people, like Egyptologists, are saying all they ate was garlic and bread. No. They had a diverse diet. Yeah, they probably ate garlic too, because garlic is tasty. Okay? You know, rub some garlic on your bread with a little bit of oil. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you're living the life. But say they only ate that. I don't know who he's talking about here that's still saying that.
And drink beer. And I thought if they do that, they will die. But
drinking beer was an important part of Egyptian life. Everyone in the upper middle classes drank beer. It was your substitute for water because people who drank beer were healthier than those who drank well water or from the river. Okay? There's nothing wrong with drinking beer. And people who drank beer were healthier in Egypt. And we do have evidence in Egypt of very large depressions in the ground that were used for making beer. They made beer on the Giza Plateau. Presumably, the workers would be drinking that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was healthy for them to do that.
Now, we discovered that they slaughter 11 cows and 33 goats every day. And this can feed 10,000 workmen a day. Then we believe now.
Those are Mark Lehner's numbers, by the way.
Millions who lived in Egypt had to build the pyramid for the king to be a god. And therefore, the households in the south and the north of Egypt participated in building the pyramid by sending workforce and food to help the king. Now,
food, yes. Workforce, that's debated. Okay? It's debated whether or not there was a conscription for pyramid construction. That's really debated. A lot of, like Mark Lehner is going to say that most of the people who worked on the pyramid were craftsmen. This was their job 365 days a year. Okay? Well, 360 days. That extra 5 was a festival that even they got off. Okay? But the food, yeah, absolutely. The king conscripted, as part of people's taxation, food from all over Egypt for the construction of the pyramids. That's part of the regular taxation of Egyptians. So that part was true. The personnel conscription, that's been hotly debated. And the evidence for that is exceptionally thin. Exceptionally thin. We don't have any records of it being done. So this is a case of empty conjecture.
Up to the second point, the stones. We discovered that all the stones of the 3 pyramids at Giza, the stones came from quarries in the site itself.
Even the king's chamber?
No, except the granite in the king's chamber, and
where'd that come from?
from Aswan.
And that's 500 miles away, right?
Yes, by the flood. The flood.
And those were 50 to 80 tons?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't?
Yes.
If I was working there, it would matter.
Zahi's right. The weight of the stones doesn't matter. That's because of the miracle of displacement. Once you get those stones on the boats, those boats can carry massive amounts of weight. We have Ostraca showing boats carrying 4 obelisks. Now, obelisks aren't light. They're heavier than any stone used on the Giza Plateau. Obelisks weigh hundreds of tons. 300 tons is not unusual for an obelisk. That's going to greatly outweigh any stone you find on the Giza Plateau. So, they're going to use boats to move these stones from Aswan and Torah to the port, which happens to be very close to the front of the Pyramid Causeway. And then the rest of the way would be just sledges.
I'm going to tell you one thing.
Okay.
If you tell me that pyramids built by giants, okay? I will say, okay, come to the excavation. All the skeleton that we discover are 5 to 6 feet high. Nothing about
Who's
giants.
saying they were built by giants?
People who hold to the Nephilim and the Anunnaki theory of pyramid construction will sometimes say that the pyramids were built by giants. It's stupid. It's ignorant, but people do say it.
Joe, if aliens build the pyramids, do they leave any? Do they shit sometimes? Aren't they going to shit?
Maybe aliens don't shit.
If they don't shit, are they
Everyone
going
shits?
to leave something on the ground?
Well, okay. I'm not going to defend the ancient alien theory, but absence of evidence doesn't mean it wasn't aliens either, okay? If the ancient aliens didn't leave porta potties, that doesn't mean there weren't ancient aliens, okay? However, we do have positive evidence that human beings built the pyramids. A lot of positive evidence. Which is the proper way to approach this, not from an absence of evidence argument.
Then after they make the base of the pyramid to be 20 feet each of stone, we found out 1,000 feet away, we found out the quarry. Look.
Yeah, you can go there and you can see the quarry today. It's true that all pyramids start off by clearing off any sand and rubble and getting right down to the bedrock. Okay? Once you got to the bedrock, then the pyramid begins by cutting a chamber down into that bedrock. Once you've cut down into the bedrock, then the pyramid is built over top of that bedrock. When we did our tour of Egypt, I showed people the people on the tour, how these pyramids were built, starting with the bedrock base. And you can still see an unfinished pyramid right beside Khufu's of one of his queens, where the base had been started, but the pyramid itself had never been finished.
From here to here, I found in situ remains of the ram.
Are there photos of this?
Of course, in my book.
Okay, let's find the photos of the equipment first.
In my book! Buy my book!
Nothing? How is that not online? That doesn't make any sense.
It's in my book, Giza and the pyramids.
Maybe
These are the tombs. These are the tombs of the pyramid builders.
Right.
I'm seeing a theme here. It's all in his book. Buy my book. Look, when you go on Joe Rogan's podcast, you better have at least give him the pictures, man. You know, be ready to give him pictures. Because, you know, his audience is very skeptical to begin with. it tends to lead towards the ancient alien theories. So if you're going to come on his show, you better be ready to show him some pictures. Otherwise, you're going to end up looking like a nunce.
If you go to my book, you'll find out that I found here the diorite and the flint tools.
I'm known to doubt that he found diorite and flint tools. Is it conceivable that they only use flint and diorite for building the pyramids? That's the critical question. And I think the evidence right now is overwhelming that bronze tools were used as the primary quarrying tools for the pyramids.
3 years ago, a major discovery happened for the first time. It is the first time that we have written evidence about building the pyramid of Khufu.
When did this happen?
3 years ago.
Really?
It's called the Wadi al-Jarf papyri.
Okay, the Wadi al-Jarf papyri was not discovered 3 years ago. In fact, it's already been published. This publication from the Institut Français d'Archéologie Orientale is copyrighted 2017. Okay, so the publication of the papyri is already 8 years old. Okay? But the discovery of the papyrus itself was during the 2013 through to the 2016 archaeological season there. Okay? So it's really... So Zahi doesn't have his dates right here. Okay? But those papyri have already been in publication for some time. And they are very, very well known already. This is not a new discovery.
Oh.
Do you want to know what's in this papyri?
I do.
This papyri was found in Sinai, in a port belongs to Khufu.
Okay. The Wadi al-Jarf is not in Sinai. It's actually on the western side of the Gulf of Suez, which means it's in Egypt. Okay? So think of it kind of this way. It's if you start at the Fayoum and sort of cut across the eastern desert until you hit the Gulf of Suez, and then you go slightly south, you'll hit the Wadi al-Jarf. Okay? So it's not in Sinai. I don't know why Zahi's saying here it was in Sinai. It's not in Sinai. It's in Egypt proper.
Port, there was caves. And inside the caves found remains of boat and this big papyri. It's large, huge.
And they did find boats there. These are all Old Kingdom boats. So that's all true. And they did find a papyrus there that was basically written by the guys who built the pyramid of Khufu.
So papyrus was made with animal skin, correct?
No, papyrus was of papyrus, from the papyri.
Right. What is it?
The papyri is just like leaves.
Papyri is made of the pith of the papyrus reed.
That's it. And this one.
Oh, those.
Those.
Yeah. But don't those look exactly like the other photograph you just had? Those up there. That looks like the heads of
But
these
this was the smalls. I'm talking about big ones.
So
these are tools for making statues and things like, but not cutting the stones.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, those are bronze tools. Those aren't stone tools. Those are bronze.
So these are the same kind of tools, though, with the same kind of materials.
Yeah, but let me...
Yeah, they're bronze. They're bronze with wooden shafts. That's your typical bronze tool from the early Bronze Age, which the pyramids are part of. The early Bronze Age.
Alabaster from Middle Egypt. Diorite from Nubia. Basalt from Fayoum. White limestone from Torah.
They're bringing diorite from Nubia. That makes it a precious commodity. They're not about to turn those into tools. They're going to use that and turn it into statuary, which is what they do. You go to the Egyptian Museum and you'll see a lot of diorite statues in the Egyptian Museum because it's beautiful stuff. It's this dark black, beautiful granite-looking material. It's absolutely gorgeous. It was important for statuary. They did not import it for tools. They were basically using bronze tools to sculpture the diorite.
How much do you think was lost during the burning of the Library of Alexandria?
A lot, of course.
Everything, right?
Everything. And that's why what I'm telling you,
Nothing was lost. Nothing substantial was lost by the burning of the Library of Alexandria. The Library of Alexandria, by the time it was burnt, was no longer used as much of a library. Most of the holdings of the Library of Alexandria had already been moved out to satellite libraries. So when the Library of Alexandria was actually burnt down, there was relatively little holdings left in it. So the burning of the Library of Alexandria made almost no difference to the preservation of books overall. Okay? Now, what did contribute greatly to the destruction of knowledge from ancient times was water, mold, mildew, mice, maggots, silverfish. Those nasty little critters that come in and find books tasty. Okay? Those things did more to destroy the knowledge of the ancient world than the burning of the Library of Alexandria ever did. Okay?
I have been excavating in Giza, Joe, for the last 57 years.
Mm-hmm.
I know every piece of sand in the site. And I want to tell you one thing also.
Okay.
I am the only Egyptologist who have an open mind.
Really?
That I always...
Only Egyptologist with an open mind. He's the only Egyptologist with an open mind. Now that's a bold claim. The only Egyptologist with an open mind.
Okay.
I am the only Egyptologist who have an open mind.
Really?
That I always
only
look.
one?
Yes, I always look at what the public say, and I will tell you about this later. I will tell you what I found in the pyramid. But let me finish this story, and after that I will come back to tell you how I look at what people say, and I try to investigate this.
Okay.
And now, Meder said, I put the stones on a cargo boat.
Okay.
And we came in the boat to Giza Plateau. The workmen took the stones up to the pyramid. We slept overnight at Giza. I got up early in the morning with my workman. We went to Torah. He made many times talking about that. Then he said, I went to Sinai to bring copper and turquoise.
Mm.
Then he said, I'm working in year 27 of Khufu's reign. He mentioned that Khufu was alive in year 27.
Okay. I looked up the claim that the Journal of Merer contains a 28th year of Khufu, and I looked it up in the official publication of that papyrus, and I was unable to verify Zahi's claim that there was a 28th year of Khufu mentioned there. In fact, I didn't see a single regnal year in that journal relating to Khufu. It mentions Khufu frequently in the text, but I'm not able to verify a single year. Days, yes. So the papyrus do seem to be indexed by day, like day 13, day 15, etc. But there doesn't seem to be a year on these papyri as far as I can tell. Now, I might have missed something. That's completely possible because I've only taken a cursory glance, but I wasn't able to verify Zahi's claim here that Khufu reigned a 28th year. Okay?
How long do you think he reigned for?
28 years. I published an article. I published an article about, you can find this article.
Why was the age 23 years, why was that attributed to them?
Now, this is a good question. Egyptologist has a problem when they count the name of the king. Because when the ancient Egyptian counted the cattle, they counted the name of the king. Sometimes they count the cattle every year. Sometimes they counted the cattle every 2 years. Then we make mistakes. But now we have year 27.
It's not just a cattle count, and I think that's not really fair. The question of cattle counts has always been sort of dicey, but we are talking about years that are counted in other ways through. Well, for example, via wine dockets. And we find that in the Palermo stone. We also find, say, Manetho has his own estimation of these counts. Okay, so it isn't just cattle counts that are being used here to date the reign of Khufu. So when Zahi says that Egyptologists have a problem here, he's being a bit disingenuous in that he should know that Egyptologists use a variety of methods to do these kind of datings, not just the cattle counts.
Then we know now, for sure, that Khufu ruled for 20...
I'm not so sure about that. Again, I'd have to see his article to be certain, and I haven't read his article on this. But from what he's shown here so far, I wouldn't draw that conclusion.
Miller said something that made me very happy. Because 25 years ago, I wrote an article to say that Memphis was not the capital of Egypt. I said that the king ruled Egypt from the pyramid. If the pyramid is in Abu Rawash, the king ruled Egypt from Abu Rawash. If the pyramid is in Giza, Giza, Abu Sir, Saqqara. Then Miller said something many people did not believe me when I wrote this article.
No Egyptologist believes it here, okay? The idea that somebody ruled, that a king ruled from his pyramid, maybe in a metaphorical sense, but not in a literal sense. Kings ruled from their capitals, and capitals tended to be cities of the living. If you go to Giza today, and you say that, oh, well, the king ruled from his pyramid, that's going to be quite an uncomfortable rule, okay? Because pyramids tend to be built in places where there's nothing. It's desert where pyramids are built. You know, there's no green space. You know, people tend to live where it's green, where there's water, where it's nice and comfortable. Pyramids are not comfortable places. Okay, this is why the kings of the Old Kingdom ruled from Memphis, because it's a reasonably comfortable area. You go there today, there's palm trees, there's grasslands, there's fields. You can get food to eat. You can get water. Okay, any time of the year, not just when it floods. Okay. Giza, the only time there's water nearby is when it floods. So, to say that the kings of Egypt ruled from their pyramids is nonsense. It's complete and utter nonsense. Yeah, he really said that. Yeah, he really said that kings ruled from their pyramids. He's been to many pyramids. He's just got pyramids on the brain. I don't know. Pyramids are really uncomfortable. As I said, unless he means it in a metaphorical sense, and I don't think Zahi means this in a metaphorical sense, at least not what I'm gathering here. I think he's out to lunch.
But Miller said Khufu lived in his palace at Giza. If he lived in a palace at Giza, means with the royal family, the public, and the government. And he said that the area that Khufu lived in it, in the pyramid called Ankh Khufu, in hieroglyphic, means the Khufu lives. This is the name of the city that Khufu lived in it.
Ankh Khufu could also be the name of a temple too, because a lot of temples were called House of the Living. Okay, so a lot of temples could have, or the House of a Million Years is another name for a mortuary temple. So Ankh Khufu could have been his funerary temple, the name of his funerary temple. In which case, Khufu living in the temple would have been his votive statue, essentially. Basically, the statue where people went and did offerings and that sort of thing. So I would not use this to imply that Khufu ruled from the Giza Plateau. It'd be a nasty place to rule from. I mean, the workers lived there because they had to live there, but no one lives there by choice.
But what's really strange, he said, it took me almost 1 day for me and my workmen to come to the pyramid. Why? Because Giza entrance was busy. Every stone coming in has to be counted. Every workman has to sign the first letter of his name. And that's why if you go today to the port of New York, it will take you 5 hours to enter because it's busy. And this is what happened at Giza Plateau.
Or he came by the Giza Plateau when the Nile levels were low. If the Nile levels are low, it is a long walk from the river to the Giza Plateau. Okay? It's only close to the Giza Plateau during the height of inundation. So it could probably take him a good day to walk if the rivers were at their low levels.
And now the stones of the Great Pyramid. I looked everywhere to find out how they counted the stones.
Okay.
That people said it's 2,300,000 blocks.
Right.
I found no evidence. It's only when the Arabs came.
Okay. Where did that claim that 2 million blocks were used in the construction of the Pyramid of Khufu come from? It wasn't the Arabs. Okay. Zahi couldn't find the reference, but I found it in about 3 minutes. Okay. He couldn't have looked very hard, is all I'm saying here. Because it came from the Pyramids of Egypt by I.E.S. Edwards, published in 1947. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the book, this used to be the preeminent source for pyramids for the average layperson until the publications of Mark Leonard. Okay? This used to be considered to be the authoritative guide to the pyramids. Okay? As I said, prior to Leonard's book on pyramids, which is vastly superior. But he says on page 116, and I quote here, "The pyramids of Cheops, or the Great Pyramid, marks the apogee of pyramid building in respect of both size and quality. No exact computation of the amount of hewn stone contained in it is possible, because the center of its core contains a nucleus of rock, the size of which cannot be precisely determined. It has, however, been estimated that when complete, the core of the local stone and outer facing of Tura limestone were composed of about 2,300,000 separate blocks, each averaging some 2.5 tons in weight and reaching a maximum of 15 tons. This is from the Pyramids of Egypt by I.E.S. Edwards, page 116 of the reprint edition." Okay, so this was not at all hard for me to find this. And as far as we can tell, this was Edwards' estimate. It doesn't predate him as far as we can tell, but this is the earliest we can trace this estimate back. And it is just a spitball estimate. Even Edwards is not claiming here that this is a precise estimate because he can't know what the core is made of. Okay? So, I think Zahi didn't look very hard when he tried to find this estimate. I don't think Zahi's much of a reader. I think he loves hanging out with celebrities, hanging out going to parties, that sort of thing. I think that's more his thing. He's a people person. He likes to schmooze. I don't think he's much of a reader. Just saying. And it shows that he doesn't understand or have read the background literature of Egyptology in general. So, but if he had done his due diligence before shooting his mouth off here, he would have known that estimate comes primarily from Edwards.
You know, all the theories that the New Age people say now, it came from the Arabs. When the Arabs came and they...
Oh, it all came from the Arabs. All the strange theories came from the Arabs. Oh, sure it did. None of it was from the British. Couldn't be.
In 2010, I brought a team, scientists, from every field, and we recounted the stones based on the new evidence, and we found out that the stones of the pyramid are only no more than 1 million. And the average height of the limestone is 0.5 ton to 2.5 tons.
Okay, so Edwards was 1,300,000 off. Well, you know, at least he was in the magnitude range correct. Okay. And he was still seems to be correct as far as the weight goes, according to Zahi's estimates here. So I don't see this as being a big deal, honestly. I don't hear Egyptologists really sort of definitively saying, oh, we know how many stones there are out there. So again, this is kind of a tempest in the teapot of a controversy. So, I mean, as far as controversies go, this is kind of, well, kind of shabby. Kind of shabby.
The base of the pyramid is 20 feet high, carved into solid stone.
Yes.
And then the other rocks were placed on top of it.
All right, I got a picture of the base. Let's pull up a picture of the base. Because I have a picture of the base. I know this because I just took a picture of the base. Okay, now, I happen to have a picture of the base of the Khufu pyramid. Now, this was a picture I took during our tour of Egypt. And, whoa! Wow, those women are giants! They must be at least 20 feet tall! Look at that! They're standing right by the base! Their heads are almost as tall as the base! It must be proof of Nephilim! It's the proof of the giants! By the way, they asked me at the time I took this picture how I was going to use the picture. I said I didn't know yet. Well, here we go! We're going to use this proof that they're giants. Because according to Zahi Hawass, that base of the pyramid is 20 feet tall. Based. You can see the next layer of stones is right above it. The base of the pyramid is not 20 feet tall. It might go down 20 feet deep, but it is not 20 feet tall. And there's the base stones right there to prove it. Okay, so... oh boy, that was fun. Based.
It's far less than that because of the new discovery that we found that the base is made of the solid rock.
So before they thought the base was individual stones?
Yes.
Okay. So now that you know the base is solid rock, that removes 1,300,000 stones that were necessary.
Yes.
Got it. So they carved this base knowing they were going to put a pyramid on top of it. And what about the subject?
What I don't get about this, what I don't understand about this is if they say that he says that they carved this base and this base is solid stone, why did they carve it to look like separate stones? That is something I don't understand. Because all of these stones were supposed to be covered with paving stones. So that base is covered with paving stones. It makes no sense that they would cut that out of solid stone and then make it look like they're individual stones. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't think Zahi has properly accounted for that.
When the king died, he became the sun god. Okay?
Okay.
Khufu, in year 5, he said, I am the sun god. And he abandoned the construction of the first burial chamber, and he built his chamber.
Every king's son array. I don't see how this is really all that relevant to how that pyramid was constructed, but okay.
You remember, you asked me that, we stopped on that. Above the capstone, there is a hieroglyphic word called Jaim. And Jaim means white and yellow gold. A second scene I found.
It means electrum. It doesn't mean white and yellow gold. Okay. It means electrum. That's what Jaim means. Okay. Electrum is not white gold, and it's not quite yellow gold. Think of it like this. It's 14 karat gold. That's exactly what it is. It's 14 karat gold. It's pretty much an even mix of gold and silver. So that's electrum.
The king asked the workmen to put the capstone in the top of the pyramid. When they put the capstone in the top of the pyramid, cased with gold, the whole country dance and sing because the king became a god. That's what I call the national project of the whole nation. The 3 millions who lived in Egypt in the time of the Old Kingdom, all of them participated in building the pyramid to
And it drove the entire country into poverty.
make the king as a god.
This is your theory.
Not a theory.
No?
It's fact.
It's a theory.
It is a fact. The pyramid was a national project.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, it's your theory that the capstone was put on and...
It's not a theory. Yeah. It's based on evidence. I found the scenes.
The papyri.
No, the papyri is something else.
What
I'm
are the
talking,
scenes?
it's blocks.
Blocks?
Limestone blocks. One scene, workmen dragging a capstone with the word Jaim.
Is this written in limestone blocks? Is that what you're saying?
No, it shows the workmen dragging a stone.
Shows it where?
In the stone that they discovered.
So it's carved into the stone.
Exactly. And the word Jaim in our...
Which stone? Which inscription? You know, Rogan's got a point here. You know, Zahi's saying a whole bunch of stuff without, you know, backing it up. Now, you know, a lot of people do, a lot of even Egyptologists believe that they used, say, electrum on the capstone of Khufu. I mean, that's not a controversial claim. But the idea that the whole country celebrated because of the deification of Khufu with the capstone being put up, that is a controversial claim. Because there's no evidence for that and no warrant for that. So there is cause here to push back against what Zahi's saying.
Above that.
Where's that at?
It's an Abusir. I found.
But are there photographs online?
Yes, in my book. I don't go online. Why
in my book?
I go to my book.
Oh no, I understand. But for everybody else, how do you think they got the stones from the king's chamber, 500 miles away, and put them 120 feet up in the ceiling?
I told you, if you come today and see how the workmen move 20 tons of...
They built the king's chamber as they were building the pyramid, so it was built in C2. So it's not surprising. I mean, they're not taking those blocks up after the pyramid's constructed. They're doing it during construction. I don't understand why Zahi's being evasive here.
Okay, right, but Joe, we're dealing with a different time, correct? Like if they're doing it today, they have access to modern machinery.
If you don't,
right?
no,
They don't?
No, it's everything based on the idea of the national project. They want to make this for the king.
I understand the national project. What I don't understand is the physics involved.
Okay.
Yeah, you see, Zahi didn't read N. Marsh's research, so now he's just sort of floundering here. You know, because he hasn't kept up with the literature.
If you don't,
80-ton blocks, 500 miles through the mountains.
If you don't believe on this,
I know it's not that I don't believe. I just want to know
inside this
hold
block.
On,
inside.
Hold on. It's not that I don't believe. I want you to explain to me how you think they did it.
I explained to you
from 500 miles away, from 50 to 80-ton blocks.
This comes through the Nile. You can bring all the stones.
Right, but we have in the mountains, right?
No, the granite quarries in Aswan, and we have cutting through the flood. They bring us all the stones to Giza Plateau.
They plan things for the floods, and then they would figure out some sort of a raft system to get them on, and then move them that way.
You know, here's the thing that I also find kind of interesting too. We do know where those quarries are. They're not in the mountains. Okay, so for Joe here to say, well, how are they bringing the rocks out of the mountains down to the river, floating them down the river, and then up to the pyramid? First of all, most of those quarries were by the river. at least for the large stones. Okay? If it's close by to the river, you can make a canal right up to the quarry, move the block onto the boat, and then navigate the boat out the canal to the river. Once you're on the river, sail it down to the port in front of the pyramid, and then just move it the rest of the way by sledge. And we do have sledges that are that large. There's I believe it's a 3.75 meter sledge that was found at one of the Senwosret pyramids that's in the Cairo Museum. So they did make sledges large enough for very, very large stones. So we even have evidence that the sledges were more than capable to move stones of that size. 3 meters, that's 10, 11 feet. Add another 2 feet to that, and you got easily enough to accommodate a 12-foot stone right there.
And written year 13 of Khufu's reign on the 3rd chamber. I took Mr. Beast with me 2 months ago. I took him and I showed him how this block.
Name dropping.
They were written by the workmen before they moved these stones.
Mm-hmm. So I understand what you're saying. So you're saying that they took these stones, they waited for the flood season, they got these stones on rafts, they moved them down the river, they got them to the site. How did they get them 120 feet in the air?
Again, this is the most important thing. This is a national project.
Oh, I understand. It was very valuable to them. I just wondered what technology.
Yeah, he could have answered this so easily with Roland's research. Because Roland answers this question directly with the pulley system. He discovered the pulley system at Hatnub. And Hatnub was contemporary with the Old Kingdom, so we do know that they could get very large blocks up large inclines of dozens of feet, at least, with this method. Now, if you're building a pyramid, you might have a pyramid built in stages, where you may not have to do it all the way up 120 feet. You might have to just go stage 150 feet. Well, 50 feet, that's the quarry height of Hatnub right there. And then another 50 feet, and another part of the pyramid, and another ramp, and another 50 feet, and so on and so on. So, the fact here that Zahi is blissfully unaware of the research of other people in his field shows his ignorance.
They moved it just a few feet away. Mm-hmm. But we have scenes of how workmen move 60-ton statue. How they move with their sledges.
Right.
And they draw it.
Yeah, I've seen those scenes.
Yeah.
But Joe is asking a different question. Joe's not asking, how do they move these things horizontally? He's asking, how do they move them vertically? That's a different question. And that uses a different technology. So, Zahi here is being evasive by answering a question Joe didn't ask.
I found a team from England, and we worked it last year for 3 seasons. Number 1, I found out above the King Chamber, a big void. Above the Grand Gallery.
Right.
This void, the size of 2 trucks.
Okay, he didn't find that. It was the neutrino scanning project that found that. And we still don't know what that void is. That's still up in the air. We don't know. We don't know what it is. We don't know if it's just a light form of rock. We don't know if it's fill like sand or dirt. We don't know if it's an empty space. Okay? We don't know what that void contains. The neutrino scan is not precise enough to give us an idea of what materials or lack of materials are there.
Another small void. Inside this void, we can see hieroglyphic inscriptions.
Really? So those are the only hieroglyphics on the pyramid, right?
And I can show you the photos in my... If
you have the footage here?
if you can come to my lecture
Oh, come
in
on,
Houston,
man. What about right here, right now?
I can send it to you
Where do you have it? Do you have it on you?
in my computer
Where's your computer?
in Las Vegas.
Oh, well, fuck.
But I can send it to you before
Yeah,
you
but I want to show it on the show.
show it in the show. I can
Like
send it
this
to you
show.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Photos
You
were
said
not
tomorrow?
provided.
Splice it in, folks.
Then tomorrow I will send it to you.
Please do. Okay.
That's typical
Now,
Zahi.
give it Jamie's email.
Yeah, give me. But you should come and.
Big
can
claims,
you
no
come and
show.
introduce me here in Houston?
Excuse me? Can I introduce you in Houston? No, I cannot.
Why?
Because I'm very busy.
Okay, fine.
If you have
Yeah, this picking a fight with Joe Rogan here. Dude, not a good look.
if I'd known in advance, I could.
No, fine,
Yeah.
fine.
Unfortunately, I don't have any free time, Zahi.
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 Not Zawi.
Zahi.
Then now,
Yeah, Zahi, you're in Joe's house. Okay, Joe plays by his rules in his house. Okay, you expecting him to come down to Las Vegas to introduce him? Yeah, good luck with that, man.
his name is Leslie Greif. Leslie is from Hollywood. He did with me many live TV shows, and he did with me Chasing Mummies. And Leslie now is working to find
Name
a
dropping.
network. I want to show them the hieroglyphic.
Why do you always feel like you're in battle with people?
Because
but
because
I
they
don't-
attack me. Go
Okay,
to
I
go,
understand
go
that.
there.
I
I'm not in a
understand
battle
that.
with people.
I
They are
understand.
in the battle with me.
I understand that. But I'm giving you an opportunity just to lay things out. You don't have.
That's arrogant. That's really arrogant. You know, he says that, you know, I'm not in a battle with people. People are in a battle with me. You know, Joe's asking him, "Why are you being so defensive?" And he's just going off here. You know, this is a really, you know, a guy who's supposed to be at the top of his game here and the height of his influence, you know, to behaving this way. It shows that he's so insecure. He is so insecure in what he knows that, and you know, he might have a reason for feeling that insecure. I mean, we've already shown him up on a couple things that he should have known better and he didn't. So he might be covering his insecurity here with his connections to celebrity and power. And we just see this as a constant pattern all the way through this. The name dropping, the influence. He's trying to show people he's an important man. Nobody questions he's an important man. But they also want answers too to their questions. And I think the responsibility of being an Egyptologist is to give people answers to the questions.
The five chambers, for example, they don't write hieroglyphic. They write a cursive hieroglyphic. It's called the hieratic.
Hieratic can be deciphered. What's the issue?
And this hieratic, Joe, it's very difficult to read.
Okay. Hieratic has its challenges. It's not like Demotic. Okay, Demotic is chicken scratch. Hieratic has been pretty stable for most of Egypt's time. Okay, so I don't know why he's struggling here with hieratic. You know, I mean, it is decipherable. It takes more work than hieroglyphic, sure, but it's not indecipherable either.
From outside.
What does that look like?
It's a cursive of the hieroglyphic.
Let me see what that looks like, Jim.
It's handwriting. It's hieroglyphic handwriting. That's all it is.
That's fascinating.
No, this is hieroglyphic.
This is hieroglyphic. That's
We
hieratic.
need to talk about
But on the
hieratic.
right hand side. It says hieratic.
Exactly. Look at the one and write this hieratic.
Okay.
Then it's very
God,
difficult.
it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
What a beautiful language. Like the way it's written. These symbols that look like make that larger, please. These symbols to the far left, where right below Jamie's cursor, right there. Like, what are those supposed to be?
They are signs.
But what does it mean?
Look, this.
It looks like a
Look,
device. or
the
something.
one down means
Interestingly enough, the one in the second row, that's an adze. Okay? It's one of those bronze tools we were talking about earlier. Basically a bronze tool with a wood handle. And it's being used here, shown here, against a square. That's a block of stone. That's the hieroglyph Ener, meaning stone. So it's showing you a stone carving tool made of bronze. Right here in the hieroglyph. Second row from the top. Funny that. How ironic.
For a determinative scribe.
What is the one that his cursor?
This is
looks like a stop sign.
It's for a scribe.
A scribe.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Scribe.
It
Sish.
means a scribe.
Sish.
Okay, I understand. So, and
Yeah, it's a scribe's palette plus a basically a brush. That's what it is. And that's looks like it is the 4th row from the top down.
then the other one on the hieratic, that's the cursive version of that.
I'm not that expert in hieratic.
Okay.
Because hieratic is very cursive.
I understand.
Wait, he's not an expert in hieratic? Didn't you take it in school? I mean, look, everyone prefers hieroglyphic. Hieroglyphic is easy to read. Okay? Yeah, hieratic can take some work sometimes to read. I don't deny that. But most of us have been taught to do some hieratic. That's part of the general training as an Egyptologist. I mean, he might have forgotten it all. That's possible. And frankly, a lot of Egyptologists don't keep up on the language skills either. A lot of them just focus on digs. And those that focus on digs sort of let their language skills slide. And yeah, that's okay. They're focused on other things. Okay, so, but, you know, it is part of the general curricula for Egyptologists to learn hieratic. Not demotic, but hieratic for sure.
Cursive signs.
Got it.
But the most important that we are going to show this live.
Oh, wow. Okay, so people don't even know, and you're going to show all this stuff live.
We will do it live. But the other thing.
Yeah. Big announcement coming. Big announcement coming. Just come to my lectures. Pay $200 for the big announcement. The big announcement's going to be he's going to show himself with another celebrity. That's going to be the big announcement. We've seen this as a repetitive pattern with Zahi. Big announcement. Big announcement. It's always a big announcement. You know, when he came to Toronto, it was the same deal. Same deal. I had a couple of colleagues that went to his lecture. So that was touted that there's going to be a big announcement at his lecture in Toronto. You know, they came back. I talked to them the next day, my friends the next day, and they said, "Hey, good thing you didn't waste your money on Zahi." You know, he talked about celebrities for an hour, and then the next hour he talked about stuff he'd already published like decades ago. And then his big announcement was a new celebrity picture. Yeah, I kid you not. I kid you not. That's what they told me. That was a big announcement. This is classic Zahi. Classic Zahi.
You have the entrance that the people use now. Is the entrance that the Arabs opened.
That's in the north face, correct?
Exactly. Above that is the main chamber.
Okay.
This corridor, clear,
this void above the Grand Gallery,
the size of 2 trucks.
What do you think that is?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that main corridor has always been known to be there. There is actually an archway there already that's visible from the outside. Everyone knew that was there. As far as the void, yeah, he's right. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody's been able to get in there, and we don't know what it is.
I tell you my theory.
Please do.
We have a story written in hieroglyphic, but not at the time of Khufu. It's after Khufu. The story, it's written in a papyri. It's called Khufu and the Magician. It said that Khufu
This is Papyrus Westcar.
was staying in his palace. And he was very upset. He was not happy. And his son came
He was a dirty old man in that papyrus.
to him. Your Majesty, why are you unhappy? He said, I'm searching for the secret of the God Thoth, the God of wisdom. Then I can design my burial chamber in the pyramid. Then his son told him, I know a magician. His name is Jidi. He knows how to cut the head of a man off and put it back. And he knows the secret of the God Thoth, the God of wisdom.
He knows how to cut the head of a man off and put it back, but is the guy still alive? Is that what he's saying?
No, this is what the son is telling his father.
I understand that.
That Jidi can do that.
A lot of people can cut a guy's head off. And
But
put it
listen
back.
to the story. They describe him as 100 years old and he drink 1,000 beer. Blah, 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 blah.
Oh.
Okay. He was 111 in the papyrus. and he drank 6 gallons of beer. Okay? A day. All right? That was doable because, well, a gallon is... It's a lot of beer, okay? That's a lot of beer to drink in a day, but Jetty had quite the appetite.
Of the king. And Khufu told him, I heard that you can cut the head of a man off. He said, yes, your majesty. He said, do it. He said, Jetty said, I cannot do it with a human being. He said, okay, I will bring you a prisoner. Jetty said, a prisoner is a human being. Then he brought him a goose. He took the head of the goose up in front of everyone. And the head came back, and the goose was running in front of everyone. That's written in the story. Then
Do you
the
believe
king...
that?
I come back to what's believed that now.
Okay.
Now, about magic.
Yeah.
Do you believe in religion or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know about Judaism?
Sure. A little
When
bit.
God told Moses, when Moses met God, and God told him to go to Egypt to meet the Pharaoh.
Right.
And God told him, remember, the Pharaohs are highly in magic.
Right.
They will beat you. Then God taught Moses how to be more in magic than the Pharaoh.
Yeah, that's not how the story goes. You know, God did not teach Moses to be more in magic than the Pharaoh's magicians, you know. He basically told Moses that I, the Lord, will do these things. So, you know, Zahi doesn't know his Bible. He doesn't... I don't think he knows his Quran much either, but hey.
And you remember, when you hear the stick, and the stick became a snake, I think,
The stick became a serpent, not a snake. Difference in wording there.
Moses brought more snakes to sworn what the Pharaoh did. Then we know from books, from Judaism from the beginning, that the ancient Egyptians were really highly in magic. Then we can believe.
The Egyptians did practice a lot of magic. That's true.
Do you think that magic might have had something to do with how they constructed the pyramids? No?
No.
You don't, but if you believe that they had enough magic to take a goose's head and put it back on and still alive, that's magic.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they use that magic for other things?
But we have...
If you believe in magic.
I do, of course.
You do believe in magic.
Yeah.
So you believe that someone...
Okay. Zahi believes in magic. Well, he's more open-minded than I am on this subject. Enough magic to take a goose's head off and put it back on? I would say there's some sleight of hand there, and I don't think that's real hocus pocus, as it were. Boy, this is a credibility hit for him.
One could take someone's head off, put it back on.
It's written.
Okay, then it must be true.
Yeah.
It's written, therefore it must be true. Yeah, I don't think that's... Papyrus Westcar was full of tall tales. It was a papyrus written in the Middle Kingdom, meant to entertain. It wasn't meant to be a historical document. Now, it did have pieces of history in it, but that's not the intent of Papyrus Westcar. Papyrus Westcar is basically, there's a Middle Kingdom king, and he's saying, oh, I'm so bored. Tell me some tales about the Old Kingdom. And then these storytellers start telling him these tales about the Old Kingdom, about Senefru and Khufu, and some of the antics that they went through. It's a story-type papyrus meant to entertain a Middle Kingdom king, not to document the history of the Old Kingdom. So I think Zahi is conflating his interpretations here.
Yeah. What is this? Someone's gonna kill a dove? It's a magic trick. Can decapitate birds and stuff.
Oh,
Put it
okay.
back together. I was just reading it. Apparently in the trick that he did it, he put the head on the other side of the room and made him come back together. He did it to a calf and a different animal also. But
Now, what really I want to tell you
well,
now,
that person's magic.
Yeah, sleight of hand.
That
Now,
person can make us a pyramid.
what I want to show you, that I'm not a person.
What do you think magic is?
Magic is magic.
What do you
think
mean?
magic is?
Well, how does it work?
I have no idea. What do you mean how it works?
Well, I mean, how does someone do something like that?
I
that
have no
seems
idea. We have to go back.
physically and
We have to go
biologically
back.
impossible.
We have to go back and you to 4,600 years ago.
And do you think a lot of this information is what was lost in the burning of the Library of Alexandria?
Hey, of course. This is some of it, but
They
still.
can't-
That's stupid. That's just stupid. You know, these were sleight of hands. Some of them were ritual magic. That's different again. This was not knowledge that was lost at Alexandria. This was knowledge that had been maintained throughout the temples of Egypt. It was distributed knowledge, but it was knowledge that either ended up being, well, not of a value because it was sleight of hand, or it was not considered to be of value because ritual magic, the benefit of ritual magic changed with the changing of religious systems in Egypt. It had nothing to do with the burning of a Library of Alexandria.
The ancient Egyptian believed that a pharaoh should be a male. A pharaoh cannot be a female. Anyone who changed the religious belief, they hate him. Hatshepsut, when she became a pharaoh, they hated her, and they destroyed her monuments.
Okay, they? Who's they? And who's the one that hated her? Hatshepsut only reigned because of her royal court, liked her and respected her long enough to maintain a long, successful reign. The person who hated her was the rightful king, Thutmose III. Okay, so the they that hated her was Thutmose III. Okay, so I think that's, again, I mean, it is true that when a dynasty ended with a female ruler, that often meant disaster for the dynasty. And that's because the kingdom had gotten so weak that it couldn't put a male ruler on the throne.
His cult, to be a sun god, in the first intermediate period, they destroyed his monuments, the temples, the statues. The only statue of that king was found in Upper Egypt, not at Giza.
And that's because during the first intermediate period, there was a civil war in Egypt. That's why things got destroyed. The Heracleopolians and the Thebans went to war. That's what happened during the first intermediate period. It was a civil war. And things get destroyed in civil war.
Satellite radar, was it called tomographic? What is it called? Tomographic? Where they think that there's these pillars underneath the structure.
Okay, I investigated this. First of all, these two scholars from Italy, they have never been in Egypt. They have never worked in the pyramids before.
Right. They're using satellite information.
Number two, they published their article in a journal. This journal do not send their article to the freeze. You pay a fee to publish the article, and your responsibility.
Okay.
Number three, I am not a scientist. I took these techniques that they used, and I gave it to expertise. And they said, these techniques cannot show underneath a solid rock of almost 600 feet down. No way.
Why can't they?
They said these techniques cannot show that.
But these scientists are saying they can. Do you know?
Okay, Zahi's right here. Okay, he's right for a couple reasons. Okay. Not, I mean, the whole idea of them being in Egypt is sort of irrelevant here. The paid journal thing is not a good look, because they didn't put it through proper peer review, which again, we wouldn't expect those papers to pass peer review. But the lidar is very problematic because the scanning depth of lidar is only about 30 to 60 feet. There's no way it can scan down, say, 600 feet. So there's no reason to assume that those results could be even accurate just because the scanning technology is not appropriate for scanning through hundreds of feet of rock. The bedrock there is hundreds of feet deep. It's complete nonsense, that whole scanning and finding chambers, helical chambers underneath the pyramid. It's complete BS. So Zahi's right here. And it doesn't take much of a cursory investigation to figure this out.
about the Osiris shaft? How they've got a
I
scanned?
discovered it.
Yeah, you did, right?
Yes.
But you know that they use this tomographic?
No, I am the one who found it. This is not.
No, I understand you found it, but they also discovered it. They showed that it exists using the same technique.
No.
The Osiris shaft isn't that deep. Okay? So, again, it's apples and oranges here.
Said that this technique cannot show 600 feet under the pyramid. The Osiris shaft that they found was only 50 feet.
Right, but
under
it's
the ground.
showing, at least for 50 feet, that this is accurate. What makes you believe those scientists rather than these guys from Italy?
Because because the scientists are scientists.
Well, these are scientists as well.
They are not showing their techniques carefully. They are not.
What do you mean they're not
Okay,
showing their techniques carefully?
Take the techniques that they said and show it to any scientist. No one can tell you this is accurate. I ask it every person who knows about radar, ultrasound, all the people who worked with me. The Scan Pyramid project, they said this is bullshit. It cannot happen at all. Now, tell me.
So you're telling me that these scientists that are proclaiming the capabilities of these satellite tomography devices that are saying that they can see kilometers into the ground with this stuff.
That's not true. I did.
Are you sure?
I did.
Do you understand the technology?
No, I don't. Not me.
So
But
you're just
but I
listening to other
asked
people.
scientists who are in this field.
Have you talked to these scientists that are saying that they have?
Yeah, that scanning technology is not capable of going that deep. Even ground penetrating radar doesn't go that deep. So I've got some serious misgivings about that whole thing. I just don't think that the scientists there did a good job of qualifying their technique. And unless that technique's qualified, there's really no reason to accept their findings here. So Zahi's right here that even if they were able to map the Osiris shaft, which is not anywhere near as deep as what they're proposing, it doesn't prove that their technique has validity. And unless you can qualify the technique might as well be smoke and mirrors. It's at that point you've got a one application technique. Marvelous. A technique that's only useful for finding chambers under the Great Pyramid. That's like an earmark for pseudoscience right there. Okay? So this whole idea of LiDAR finding shafts and all this stuff under the Great Pyramid, I think is complete nonsense.
You discovered it, but they used their technology to show an accurate depiction of the interior of the Osiris shaft.
Again, that's so shallow compared to what they're claiming. It doesn't qualify the technique. Rogan doesn't know this. I wouldn't expect Rogan to know this because he's not familiar with how these ground penetration techniques work. Okay? You basically have to send a wave of some kind, whether it's a radio wave, a microwave, some sort of wave has to penetrate into the ground, be reflected off of something, and then come right back to be detected. That's generally how these technologies work. Okay? Through reflective technology. Okay? The problem here is that all these things have to be qualified. Okay, all these techniques have to be qualified to see that they work in the general case before you can apply them to the specific case. This was a problem with the Shroud of Turin stuff, where they had done this technique in the specific case, especially the linen dating that they were doing, but they hadn't actually been able to prove that it works in the general case. Okay? They didn't qualify their technique. This is the same thing for this scan underneath the pyramid. They didn't qualify their technique in the general case. They had one proof case with the Osiris shaft, but so Osiris shaft isn't that deep. So just because they were able to show something with the Osiris shaft doesn't mean the same technology is going to work at deeper depths, because they hadn't qualified this to do deeper kinds of analysis. Now, if they had been able to show this in a coal mine, like, take for example, there are coal mines and gold mines out there that go really deep into the earth. Show that it works on those, then, okay, you might have something. But they didn't do that. Okay? They took one look at this shaft at the Giza Plateau and called it good. That's not enough to qualify a technique as valid. So, while Zahi is getting worked up here because he doesn't know how to respond to this, Joe's not right either because he doesn't know how these techniques work or how scientific methods work for qualification of analytical analyses.
Maybe, I don't know, but
Yes.
this is 50
Let's
feet.
look at it
But
again.
they're talking about 600 feet.
I understand, but if it can go 50 feet, why can't it go
Okay,
600
now
feet?
I'm
Do you know?
again, I'm not a scientist.
Right, so why are you
I
dismissing
gave-
it, though?
Because it's not qualified. That's the reason. Just because it can scan 50 feet down doesn't mean it's valid 600 feet down. That's the burden of proof is not on Zahi to prove this. The burden of proof is on the researchers who proposed this. And those Italian researchers never qualified their technique. We were seeing this a lot coming out of Italy recently, where they're having these teams of people doing these single-purpose techniques without qualification. That's bad scientific method.
I gave what
I
they
understand.
published
I
to a
understand.
scientist, and they said,
These
what
are wrong all
okay,
the time,
fine,
particularly ones that are biased,
Then what,
correct?
Joe Rogan here just pulled out a Galileo fallacy. All right. Scientists are wrong all the time, especially those who are biased. Okay, so that's a kind of Galileo fallacy. That's this person doesn't fit with the orthodoxy, and he could be wrong, therefore he's right. Yeah, sure, scientists can be wrong, but also so can pseudoscientists. Pseudoscientists actually have a worse track record here. So if you want to go with who's wrong, the pseudoscientists are in a much worse position here than the scientists, even though they might be biased.
The only people who really can tell you it's correct or not are the scan pyramid people, not me.
But the scan pyramid people, aren't they using different technology?
But they know about technology. They are the top scientists in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I have to believe them, not the two Italians.
Yeah.
And if the Italians are really correct, they could come to talk to us, not me,
Well,
to talk to me and others.
I will definitely try to connect you with those people because I know that Graham Hancock and Brian Murarescu have been in contact with those people, and they're open-minded.
Yeah, Graham Hancock. That's a reliable name. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Graham Hancock can vouch for those Italian scanning people. Oh, brother. Yeah, let's get the ancient aliens people in here to start vouching for researchers. Classy.
When people began to tell me there is something inside the Sphinx, I really, as I told you, I have an open mind. And I did search. I found inside the Sphinx 4 tunnels. These 4 tunnels are published. An article, scientific article. I found in situ, in all the 4 tunnels of pottery, in situ, to prove that these tunnels were opened on Dynasty 25, 500 BC, as in the late period. When the Egyptians saw the Sphinx, they thought there is something hidden underneath, and they dug.
Yeah, that was very common in the 25th dynasty, where robbers would basically carve tunnels into things. These are called robbers' tunnels, and they're very, very common in a lot of monuments. There's one at the Step Pyramid at Saqqara that also dates to the 25th dynasty. Yeah, a lot of it. Again, this part of it was that change in dynasty. Okay, the 25th dynasty, that's the Nubian dynasty. Okay, So the Nubians come down and conquer Egypt. But in their conquest of Egypt, they start looting the place. They start stealing stuff. And they start carving all these robbers' tunnels into various monuments, looking for loot that they can steal. So, yeah. Yeah, very common. These were very common. A lot of these tunnels weren't very deep, but we do find them in a lot of places. But they don't originate with the original monument. They are much, much later. Thousands of years, sometimes later.
Robert Schoch and his theory about the temple and the erosion outside of the Sphinx, that it's water erosion.
Yeah, Robert Schoch said all sorts of crazy things. I wouldn't take anything Robert Schoch says as gospel. I mean, it's woo-woo New Age garbage.
It's not a theory. It's a theory of a New Age guy. Then we gave this guy from Louisville University for a season. And he came and we published many articles that the erosion that you see outside and inside the Sphinx is from wind and not from water.
And that's exactly what we expect from the erosion at the Sphinx. We see the same sort of erosion at the Temple of Menkaure. The Temple of Menkaure actually is worse erosion than at the Sphinx. Much, much worse erosion than at the Sphinx. And yet it's a newer building than the Sphinx. So the power of wind erosion cannot be underestimated. It's a very, very powerful force, and it's actually kind of surprising that the Sphinx isn't more eroded from wind erosion. But it was also the fact that it had been buried under sand for so long that protected it from the wind erosion that, say, Menkaure's funerary temple did not receive the benefit of.
It's very small comparing
so
to the body.
So you think the head was made first, and then the body was made later?
Exactly.
If that's the case, why is the body so much more eroded than the head?
I told you, the body, it is a part of the bad stones.
Bad stones.
Yeah, on the body section of the Sphinx, the limestone is laminated. It's laminated between soft and hard layers of limestone. And that's just a natural formation of the Giza Plateau when essentially it was runoff for a sea. That whole area used to be underwater around 2 million years ago, and it then turned into a runoff plain. When it became a runoff plain for the rest of Africa, the limestone that formed there formed in this sort of hard, soft lamination of levels. And it's the soft layer that gets eroded faster. But when you get to the head portion, at that point, the erosion starts to change, and it becomes much more of that hard type of limestone for the rest of the height of that limestone area.
Tell me about Zep Tepi.
What's Zep Tepi? What's this?
You never heard about... Have you heard about you know about the King's List, right? The old King's List that goes back 30,000 whatever years.
Who said that?
You never seen it? It's not in hieroglyphs?
This is not true.
Is that true?
No. This is speculation from people who knows nothing about history. There is nothing King List dated back 30,000 years ago at all.
So why do people keep saying that?
Because they don't know. It's speculation. Give me one evidence of that. The first King List dated back to Dynasty 5. Only.
I was reading that people were saying that it was myth. That the King's List, even though there is like some hieroglyphics of ancient kings, that these are just mythical tales.
This is not true. There is no at all a name that you told me. I never heard of this name. I am an Egyptologist working in Egypt for the last 57 years. I never heard of this King List at all.
Never?
Never.
And never even heard of it?
Why I have to hear about it? Because it's not true. I don't want to waste my time in things like this. I am a person. Give me a fact.
So
tell me what is this
Egyptian Zep Tepi?
All right. The term Zep Tepi, it's a corruption of regnal year dates where, say, the king's name gets chopped off. Okay? So, so Khufu Rempet okay, so his regnal year of the his first regnal year. Okay, so it's a corruption of that, and it's not a real king's name, and it is not found in any king's list.
Refers to the first time or the first occasion.
Who said that?
This isn't AI. It refers to a mythical golden age of Egypt where gods lived on earth and civilization was in its infancy. This period is often associated with the beginning of creation and the establishment of societal structures.
Yeah, this comes out of dilettante myth. This is not something you find in say Egyptology proper.
Have you've never heard of that before?
No, and this is not true.
What do you mean it's not true? I mean, I'm getting this off of...
It never happened at
Okay,
all.
I'm not saying it happened. I'm just saying that this is something that's referred to.
I never heard about it. It is not true. It does not exist at all.
Even if it doesn't exist, the myth of it exists.
It's a myth that comes not out of Egypt. This is New Age religious myth. This is not, say, Egyptian religious myth. So it's not old. It's not old at all. It's a current sort of thing. So Zahi's rightly confused here because he doesn't understand New Age myth. So, but it doesn't have anything to do with Egypt. You sometimes see this reference to in ancient alien lore. Because again, a lot of ancient alien lore gets its information from the New Age movement. So that's what we have here.
If you go to Wikipedia...
I don't care about Wikipedia.
I understand.
I care about what I see in my eyes as an archaeologist or a philologist.
In all the myths, the world was said to emerge from an infinite lifeless sea when the sun rose for the first time in a distant period known as Tepi.
Yeah, you see, you can tell from that this is not an Egyptian myth. Because Egyptian myth doesn't have the sun rising from the sea for the first time. In Egyptian myth, you have the primordial waters, from which produce the egg. And from the egg hatches the sun god Re. Re then goes forth and creates the other gods. That's Egyptian myth. This idea that their sun rose out of the primordial waters and then starts a golden age, that's not Egyptian myth. That's New Age religion. Joe doesn't understand the difference here.
First occasion, different myths attributed to the creation of different gods, the set of 8 primordial deities called Ogdod, the contemplative deity,
the Ogdoad,
Ptah, and the mysterious transcendent god Amun. While describing these different...
Yeah, those are not the Ogdoad. But go on.
Cosmologies competed to some extent. In other ways, they were complementary in different aspects of Egyptian understanding of creation. It's an Egyptian creation myth.
Fine.
It's a mishmash. What he's quoted here is a mishmash of various Egyptian myths kind of mushed together into a New Age religious myth here.
You've never heard that before?
Never heard of that?
That seems strange that you didn't hear about that before.
Listen, Joe.
I've heard of it before.
Fine, you can hear about
it. I mean, I just found it online.
It's a New Age theory.
It's New Age?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like Zahi just isn't familiar with, say, New Age religion. And Joe sort of has kind of dropped on Zahi here ancient aliens myths that are kind of sort of more prevalent in his space. Now, Joe entertains these people a lot. You know, guys like Graham Hancock, Childress, you know, these ancient alien guys are really in Joe's sphere of influence. They're not in Zahi's. Zahi has no interaction with those people. He doesn't understand New Age religion to any significant degree. So Zahi's getting frustrated here that he's being asked to comment on things he's never heard of. Well, if you're not a specialist in new religious movements, yeah, of course he hasn't heard of them. This is on the fringe of what he's done. So I'm not sure that it was good interview technique for Joe Rogan to drop that on Zahi, but also I don't think Zahi handled this very well either.
There is every Egyptologist here study languages and archaeology. No one can answer what you are talking about. This is hallucination. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's true that you wouldn't study this if you were doing a Egyptological curriculum. There is no Egyptological program in the world that would teach this stuff. Okay, but you do get this if you happen to have ever taken a course in new religious movements. If you take a course in new religious movements, which is not in the field of Egyptology, but in the field of religion, then you might have had some exposure to this. I've had some exposure to this because I did study new religious movements. But a guy like Zahi would have never been able to field this because it's just not something you find the ancient Egyptians talking about.
And I believe of a scene that I can see, but I don't believe on theories like this. Tell me where it is found, and where it is, and who published it. What is the scientist who published it? What is the Egyptologist who talked about it?
I'd like to know. That's why I'm asking you.
I've never heard of it.
Well, I'm shocked that you haven't at least heard of it and dismissed it before.
Why would have you heard of it? It's not something you find in Egyptology. It's something you find in new religious movements. Because it's something in... Joe's asking him to comment on something that's not in his field.
Because it's just I think it's a part of the creation myth.
I know, but it's not true.
No, it's not. It's not part of the Egyptian creation myth. It's part of a New Age creation myth that's less than 100 years old.
I received many theories every day. My mind, Joe, now is really cannot stand all these theories, all of it. It's too much for me.
As Egyptologists, we are both blessed and cursed. We are blessed with having access to just a incredible wealth of historical information, cool architecture, amazing art, a writing system that delights as well as edifies. But we also get bombarded with a lot of crazy. We do get bombarded with people who are basically New Age, people who think they're reincarnations of Queen Cleopatra that are looking for their origin story. We get bombarded by people who think that the Ark of the Covenant is buried underneath the pyramids. We get bombarded with people who think that the Egyptians are related to the lost city of Atlantis. We get a lot of crazy. We get a lot of crazy. And a lot of Egyptologists react like Zahi here. They get frustrated by it. So I've seen this before in other Egyptologists where you start talking about this stuff and they start going off on it just because it gets much. It gets too much. It gets too much. And you don't want to treat these people like they're stupid, because they're not stupid. They're deceived, but they're not stupid. So it does get tiring.
Do you base the dates on? Do you base it on carbon isotopes?
No, we don't. We based dating on the evidence that we discover.
Right, but
like
some of it is based on carbon, right?
No,
carbon
I don't believe in carbon date 14 at all.
You don't?
No,
why not?
Carbon date 14 never given accurate dating.
He's right as far as the carbon-14 dating goes, as far as ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt has been is an unusual case where carbon-14 is skewed for a variety of reasons, which we're still not completely sure of. When we compare the dates from carbon-14 from historical sources, that they can be out by 100, 150 years. So carbon-14 is not so valuable in Egypt. Most of the dating tends to be done by comparative historical sources. That's generally what most of the dating is done by.
But I'm curious as to why you're skeptical about carbon dating, because I think carbon dating is generally accepted as being accurate within a certain framework.
It is, but I never used it.
He doesn't understand it, and clearly Zahi doesn't understand why it doesn't quite work right. Especially in the Levant. the Levant, Egypt, around that part of the Mediterranean, it's, and this has been chronicled by many people. BTOC talks about this. The reason why carbon-14 doesn't work is just because there seems to be some error that has been introduced by old carbon. And that usually is about 50-ish years for the Iron Age 2, about 75 for Iron 1, 100 years for Late Bronze 2, and usually around 150 years for the Middle Bronze period. And that skewing of dates makes carbon-14 unreliable for Egyptological work, which is why it's never really, that carbon-14 method, while absolutely fantastic in temperate zones, just doesn't seem to work well for Egypt. Now, some of it is the fact that trees don't form rings. Some of it seems to be that there's a lot of calcium carbonate from the Mediterranean and from old sources in the Egyptian soil. So it skews the carbon readings towards something older. Okay. So it's just something that is not used by Egyptologists in general because of that particular problem with carbon-14. And calibration doesn't make this any better, unfortunately.
And many people think very rare used in Egypt, because in Egypt mainly we have absolute chronology. We have absolute dating based on inscriptions.
Right, but I thought it
Yeah, that's not the reason. The reason is inherent inaccuracy in Egypt.
was used in Egypt, like to measure wood that was in mortar.
It is used sometimes, but very few Egyptologists will depend upon it, because we know the problem with wood in Egypt. Again, wood doesn't form rings in Egypt, because you don't... To form tree rings, you need seasons. Egypt doesn't have weather seasons like we do in the temperate climates. See, one of the things about having a tree ring is it keeps your carbon separate year to year to year. The more outside from the center, from the core of the tree the ring is, the younger the carbon. If you only have one tree ring for the entire tree, you're not going to get that separation of carbon. And that produces problematic results when you have to try to carbon-14 it.
And it's not working.
But
I didn't see the result.
you haven't seen a result on carbon testing of the mortar of the Great Pyramid?
No, but the mortar, you can't. One thing, the mortar between the stones.
Right.
This mortar, like, if you take...
There's no mortar used in the Great Pyramid. Mortar was not a part of pyramid construction during the Great Pyramid.
It cannot date a pyramid. How can you
Well,
date...
hold on. You don't date stone.
I'm saying, if you date mortar,
Okay.
how can you say accurately that this mortar is dated to the same time of building the pyramid?
Well, you can actually. That's the argument, is that there's probably repairs done.
Yeah, but you're making mortar out of inorganic materials. How are you going to date that? That's a really difficult thing to date.
And this story that I'm telling you is written in a granite stela. It's called the Dream Stela, located now between the two poles of the Sphinx. In the stela, it say that Thutmose the Fourth was a prince, and he came to have a nap beside the Sphinx. And the Sphinx came to him in dream and told him, "My son, if you remove the sand away, I will make you the king of Egypt."
Long before that.
Before the whole kingdom.
And it had been covered in sand.
Yes. Then with Thutmose the Fourth, he took this granite stela as a door, and he wrote this story in it. But we found there is something politics in that story. He killed his elder brother, who was supposed to be the king of Egypt.
We don't know how his elder brother died. Just, that's speculation on Zahi's behalf here. We do know that the elder brother predeceased him, but we don't know if it was at Thutmose the Fourth's hand. It could have been. Maybe. Could be. But we're not sure. This Dream Spieler does not record that. Nothing records that.
The god, Hor Im Achet, Horus of the horizon, it chose me to be the king of Egypt. And I will forgive the crime that he did. When that stone...
The Dream Stealer was basically a way of justifying Tutmosis IV's reign because he was the son of a minor queen. That's the reason. The great queen of Amenhotep II had no eligible heirs. The son died predeceased his father, so there was a contest there over who was going to get the throne. So Tutmosis IV comes up with this Dream Stealer story in order to secure his claim to the throne.
10 years. When people ask me about the best thing that I did in my life, I say two things. Number one, that I restored the Sphinx. I brought the proportions of the Sphinx back. And I restored the oldest pyramid in Egypt, the Step Pyramid. It was falling down. In 14 years, I made major important conservation and restoration. And I tell people...
And he hired one heck of a German engineering team to do that restoration of the Step Pyramid. Okay. He didn't do it himself, but he certainly got the gears of government going to have it done. And he does deserve credit for that, even if he is a raving egotist.
What do you think the arguments are that predate, that try to push the date back of the construction of the pyramids?
I never heard of this.
You've never heard of this before?
No, it's only new. It's a theories
from
the new age.
But I saw a debate with you. I saw a debate with you and Graham Hancock, and there was another archaeologist.
That was
hold on. The other archaeologist was saying, if you're saying that something happened 10,000 years ago, where's the evidence of any civilization from 10,000 years ago?
Exactly.
But then you found Göbekli Tepe. So Göbekli Tepe was buried over 11,000 years ago.
That's not true. I never heard about this.
What do you mean it's not true?
It's not true what I told you.
What is not true?
It's never happened.
Tepe?
We never discovered this at all.
Wait a minute.
Göbekli Tepe is a 12,000-year-old civilization, but it's in Turkey, not Egypt. Now there are civilizations in Egypt that do go back that far, but they're very primitive. Okay, very primitive. I mean, you're talking Nagata 1, or even Chalcolithic civilization. Now these are really primitive civilizations.
Old civilization.
That's not true. Göbekli Tepe is universally accepted as being more than 11,000 years old.
I am talking now about Egypt. I'm not.
No, I understand, but the argument was that there was never any ancient civilization capable of spectacular construction 10,000 years ago. Now that they showed Göbekli Tepe is more than 11,000 years old, they know for sure that's not true.
Okay, but now I'm talking about the pyramids of Egypt.
But again, how does that prove that the pyramids are 10,000 years old? It doesn't. It's apples and oranges. You know, yeah, okay, you've now got a civilization in Turkey that, you know, shows, you know, advanced monument construction 12,000 years ago. Okay, fine. What does that have to do, you know, as they say, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? It's irrelevant. It's a red herring. So I don't see Joe's point here. Yes, okay. You know, his argument from years ago, Zahi's argument from years ago that there was no civilization 12,000 years ago capable of doing this. Okay, not great reasoning. Okay. But at the same time, too, from the civilization that we are focused upon, even if you have that in your quiver, doesn't mean you can show that the pyramids are 10,000 years old. Everything we have from the pyramids shows that they're no older than 5,000 years old. Tops. And really, they're more like 4,600. So again, we are at that sort of cusp of, okay, what does the evidence show us? The evidence shows us through the inscriptions, through the comparative historical material, that these are not 10,000 years old.
So how does ancient Egypt emerge?
How
does it emerge and go from zero to pyramids?
Okay,
It doesn't go from zero to pyramids. There are steps along the way. Joe here is sort of unaware of the whole mastaba age of that predated pyramids. Whence goes back to Nagata 3. You know, that's your zero. Your zero is the beginning of Nagata 3, also called Dynasty 0. That's your 0 point. Then you get the Mastaba age. Then you get pyramids. And the pyramids begin in Dynasty 3.
From mud brick, no stones. And these stones are created in a site called Abydos.
You know, what's really fascinating about this is that 500 years, you think about that, how different just modern civilization was 500 years ago. And now, look what we have with electronics. Now imagine what the Egyptians were able to do in 500 years in a different way, in construction with stone. That their advancements weren't like our advancements, but their advancements were equally spectacular, just in a different way.
Well, I mean, that's goes without saying. You get the first pyramid in 2600 BC. You go back to Dynasty 0, you know, let's say 500 to 800 years prior. You know, they're still using mostly stone tools at that point. You're seeing at that point the beginning of the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age was a huge revolution in technology. You know, for the first time, people are able to fashion tools to shape. You know, you weren't restricted to the shape of your stone that you have to nap to make it sharp enough to turn it into a tool. You could make fine tools like fishing hooks. That's a big deal if you're a river culture. You know, you could make razors. Now you can have lice control without using crude lice combs. So there's a huge bump in technology that happens at Dynasty 0. But it's not in its construction methods. It begins with the implementation of bronze. Bronze is the key to the technology revolution of the early Egyptian period.
On Dynasty 3 came a king called Zoser. He had a genius architect. His name is Imhotep. I am searching. Did you hear about Imhotep before?
Yes.
Okay. I'm searching for his tomb.
Everyone wants to find Imhotep's tomb. Everyone does. It's the holy grail of Egyptology. I'm not surprised Zahi's been looking for it.
For the tomb of Imhotep most of my life. But the area that I found this tomb, it was under houses, modern houses.
Oh, wow.
The workmen who work in the site, 100 years ago, they built houses in the site. But they never excavated what's underneath the houses.
Wow. So modern houses, and underneath there's an ancient tomb.
6 months ago, we gave
That's quite common, actually. West Thebes used to be entirely covered with houses, and they sort of raised them all down because they were built on top of tombs. Of course, the owners of the house were digging in the basement, robbing those tombs. Yeah. It was a thing.
Now I come back.
What technology can you use to discover like these underground caverns and chambers? And
all what I do is digging.
that's it?
That's it.
They're not just digging. They're using a combination of ground-penetrating radar and cesium magnetometry. They're also using satellite photos from the satellite mapping project that was done by Sarah Parkak. So, you know, that's tipped Zahi off on more than one tomb. Okay? There's been tombs that Zahi has found using Parkak's technology. And Parkak has, at times, she has applied for a concession in Egypt, been denied, and then Zahi starts to dig there. Amazing. What an amazing coincidence that Parkak puts in a concession application just before Zahi starts digging there. Amazing. It's a miracle.
Please do. Jamie, Zep Tepe, did you find anything about that? about that? Where are the origins of that?
Maybe a book from 1960, and I couldn't figure out how he got there.
Probably a long slodge through information to try to get to the root of it.
Yeah. It's called the step
pyramid. Yeah.
In the pyramid
So
text,
that's the first one.
in the pyramid text, they say that the step pyramid is a stairs, that the king is buried underneath to go to heaven.
And this one was how many years before the Great Pyramid?
It's almost 700 years.
So obviously it's not nearly as sophisticated as the Great Pyramid. So
Okay, it's not 700 years. It's closer to 60 years. Okay. It's not hundreds of years of difference between the Step Pyramid and the Pyramid of Khufu. It's decades of difference. All right. The dates for Zoser are 2688 to 2669 BC. The dates for Khufu, if we use a 23-year dating, is 2610 BC to 2587 BC. That's not a difference of 700 years. That's a difference of between the death of Zoser and, say, the accession of Khufu. You're talking here 59 years, 60 years, about that. So this is not hundreds of years of difference. This is decades.
The pyramids were huge because of the quality of the stones. In Dynasty 5 and 6, there is no good quality of stones. Then the Egyptian made decrease on the volume of the stones. And
well, it wasn't just the quality of the stones. It was the fact that stonework was expensive. It was an economic factor as much as anything else. You know, they're building their pyramids at other locations where quarrying stones becomes more of an issue. And if you start quarrying stones in those places, you have to drag them in. And that becomes prohibitively expensive. So, like, for example, you do have, prior to Khufu, you do have Senefru. And he is quarrying stones and dragging him into sites like Meidum. You know, so, you know, for him, he can spare no expense. Things are still economically viable enough that a guy like Senefru, and then his son Khufu, and then his sons Jedefre and Khafre can build pyramids where it is still an economically viable prospect. And it doesn't matter if you have a quarry on the site like the Giza Plateau, or if you're quarrying it from somewhere else and bringing it in, like what happened at Meidum. But once you start, building pyramids elsewhere, stones become expensive to drag in. Even say Zoser's pyramid, there's no natural quarry immediately on the site, but his pyramids made all of stone. So it's not that the quality of stones wasn't available. It's now become prohibitively expensive as they start building these stone pyramids and realizing what the price is, what the cost is for doing this. So it quickly becomes an economic factor where they have to start making the core of these pyramids mud brick, the volume of it as mud brick, and then just put casing stones over top to make it look nice.
Did increase in the volume of the war reliefs. Temples began to be decorated with scenes for the first time. In the Middle Kingdom, another trend. Mud brick pyramid, but underneath maze corridors of stones. That if you go down, you will lose your way.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as to say that you lose your way in those Middle Kingdom pyramids, but they did build more extensively underground.
There are many people in America believe that you believe in aliens. When I talk to them that I'm coming to see you,
That I believe in aliens?
they do.
Well, I'm not opposed to the idea of aliens existing. There's hundreds of billions of galaxies in the known universe, each with hundreds of billions of stars. The idea that we're uniquely alone. You don't think there's anything out there? Nothing. So you don't believe in ancient civilizations capable
No.
of advanced construction.
Joe,
you don't believe
Joe,
in aliens.
Joe,
you don't believe in carbon dating.
I am a scientist.
Oh.
If you believe in something, write an article. Then I can read. But don't give me a theory.
But the theory of planets containing intelligent life is...
No, that's not true. I have been debating Graham Hancock and Robert Bafal and John Antonowist, and I told them from the beginning, your theory will go with the wind.
Right, but we're not talking about that theory. We're talking about aliens being possible.
No way!
No aliens, just us.
This is
only
the
us in the
national
whole
cause.
universe.
If you believe in
Us
God,
in the whole universe?
if
Only
you,
us.
if you believe in God, you will do miracles. The Egyptian
Okay.
believed in the afterlife, and they made this great civilization.
I'm not saying aliens made it. I'm saying it's very possible there's something else out there in the
Okay.
world.
Okay, we're gonna stop the we're gonna stop it right here. Okay. Wow, this was a wild ride. You had a little bit of fallacies, but actually less fallacies than I expected. A lot of defensive behavior by Zahi Hawass. He couldn't answer a lot of the questions because he wasn't up to date on the literature. It's clear that he sort of let his skills slide. I mean, he name drops all over the place. This is very, very typical of Zahi Hawass. He doesn't tell you the goods, but come to my lecture and you'll get it there. In which case he's going to just drop you another photo of him with a celebrity. All of this is very, very typical of Zahi Hawass. He doesn't read. He thinks he's discovered it all. And yeah, people are panning him right now, and we can kind of see why they're doing it because of this interview. It's clear that he wasn't familiar with Joe Rogan's show or the kind of content that Joe produces. And he wasn't aware enough of, say, the fringe theories that Joe often entertains as he does his podcasts. So I wouldn't call this a smashing success for Zahi. It wasn't really a good look for him. And I don't think he'll be on the Rogan Experience ever again, in all honesty. So anyway, we hope you learned something tonight. I hope that you found this popcorn review of the Joe Rogan Experience with Zahi Hawass interesting and entertaining. We want to thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible.